welcome to the Grace Under Pressure podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Willis, and today I have a very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, Grace Under Pressure. I am Benjamin Willis. I am a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu brown belt underneath Lott and Erik Medlin, and I also happen to be Sarah Willis's, your lovely host, husband.
Indeed. So I thought it would be really good to have him on the show. Yes, I know he's not female, and this is a female-centric podcast, but I thought it'd be really interesting to have him on the show since Jiu Jitsu is a massive part of our lives, and in fact, it brought us together. Ben's a much better storyteller than I am. So, Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Jiu Jitsu, and eventually, oh no, bless you, and how, it brought us together.
How far back do you want me to go?
Well, I mean, give us the Spark Notes version.
Spark Notes, all right. I was a high school wrestler. I got into college in a state that had no wrestling club, no at the collegiate level, and I had a boss in my building that said, hey, would you like to learn how to do jiu-jitsu? Wrestling and jiu-jitsu go hand in hand. I said, absolutely. Fast forward, now 9 years. It's been a great part of my life, and I'm really excited that I was introduced to jiu-jitsu. So Spark Notes coming into it. After college, I traveled around a little bit, joined a team, got my purple belt there. I was working and traveling at the same time, and I was in a town that I wasn't as familiar with. So I messaged a buddy who said, hey, check out Anthony Mitchell's in Ridgeland, Mississippi. Great place to train. And I line up with Anthony as a blue belt at that point. And I looked to my left, and there's a really tall, attractive blonde girl that I had actually seen at a local tournament in New Orleans only a few months prior. I'm like, that's interesting. So I decided to strike up a conversation, and this girl had zero interest in actually talking to me. I said, well, would you like to go have dinner sometime? She's like, maybe. And that left it at that. Didn't ask any further questions. Well, a few weeks later, this little lady decided to kick me in the leg and say, hey, when are we going to go eat? I looked at my watch and I said, hey, let's go out Sunday. And a year later, we were engaged. And 6 months after that, we were married.
Yeah. That was no time.
No time. And that was 2 years ago at this moment.
Yeah. Woo! So, yeah, Jiu-Jitsu brought us together. I think we even had our... both of our gis were like tied together or something like that. And
just the belts.
Oh, just the belts. I couldn't remember but our gis were in our rehearsal dinner. That's the word. So yeah, Jiu-Jitsu's been a part of it for a long time. He has more gis than I do, which is not fair. It is what it is, though. He has.
I've done twice the time you have.
Anyway, but yes, so Jiu-Jitsu's been a massive part of our lives. I know that I've had the chance to compete a lot more than you have just because you've had a crazier schedule, sometimes 7 days on as opposed to, a normal work schedule. But yeah, so we definitely keep training, and that was one of the big things when we moved. We wanted to find a good, solid gym that was welcoming. Yes, good for Ben, but good for me. And that's something I did want to talk about today was, the dynamics with training males and females in the same, school, or as some people might say, the dojo, but that's definitely not what you call it in jiu-jitsu. And of course, as a female, when I'm coming into a gym, I'm looking for specific things. When Ben goes into a gym, he's looking for specific things. And if you were to see us side by side and watch us roll, we have two very different games. I'm more open, loosey-goosey, that kind of style. Ben's more grindy and old school. He gets mad at me when I try to do stuff. Well, she got too fancy. That's why she got beat, But yeah, so things that I look for are a little different. So I'd like to get the male perspective. So what do you look for in a good quality gym? Something that is not going to be, I guess you could say, toxic.
One of the biggest things for me when I walk in is the actual presentation. Is it clean? Does it seem like a nice facility? How welcoming are the people? How are they kept? If they pass the smell test, it's always a good sign. and the next one is the people, obviously. Always go around whenever you're moving into a new town. Don't be afraid to shop around and meet new people. Put yourself out there and just see which one passes your vibe. There's a couple local places where we live, and no knock to other schools, but the one that we chose here really is the most welcoming in the town. Truly great people. I like to be grindy. Sometimes that's not always necessary. And sometimes if you're looking for personal growth, you might have to put yourself out there a little bit more. And I was looking for a place that was not so much the old school, let's get after it rough mentality, but open up, play the game, have fun with it. And I think we had a great choice.
I think so too. And I think what you said about the smell test, that's a huge thing. And I think that's something that unfortunately some gym owners overlook. Because I remember listening just to some stories about like some really famous gyms in New York, but that would they were so locked up, there wasn't any sunlight, and that's just a breeding ground for staph, ringworm, you name it. Something's growing on those mats, and it's going to be growing on you too. So.
Well, I can say definitely this. Like in 12 years of grappling, 3 years of high school wrestling, and 9 years of jiu-jitsu, never caught staph or ringworm.
Yeah,
so.
I haven't either, and it's been about 6 years for me, and that's just so much of, does the owner care? And if the owner doesn't even care about their facility, how much do they care about you? I mean, I hate to say it that way, but, people are the whole thing that make jiu-jitsu possible. If you don't have healthy people, you're not going to be able to have class. If you don't have healthy people that aren't battling off infections or illnesses that you can help prevent, I don't think you're being a really responsible owner, which says a whole lot. Now, as a guy going in, are you turned off when you see a lot of women in the gym? Is that not in a creepy way? Is it attractive?
Well, for me, it's always interesting when I see a lot of women out of school. As a fairly rough guy, I'm cautious around women when rolling. I have a very good understanding of what I'm personally like. And
terrible human being, yes.
Thank you. But when I roll, I do enjoy getting after and have a little bit of rough fun. I understand that as a guy, you cannot roll with another woman like that, especially on a first-time basis.
Right.
You have to get to know them before you can open it up. Some women can take it. Other women, you cannot put pressure on it. You have to be cognizant of how you roll with other people. And that's something that's been a big part of my jiu-jitsu journey, is learning how to dictate and understand who I can and cannot do certain things with. But it's my overall belief that a school with a large number of women is a mentally healthy place, in the sense of women feel welcomed, they feel comfortable, they feel safe. And I don't know of too many jiu-jitsu schools that are run by women, but those that are great, that's going to attract a lot of women. But if a jiu-jitsu school is run by a guy and he has a large number of female clientele, usually that speaks highly of that specific guy and the people that he has around him. And so if I see a lot of women on the mat, I'm excited, and I'm like, okay, this is a pretty good place. Yeah.
I don't know, and it's rare to find. I know here in our gym is Pursuit Jiu-Jitsu, and we're very blessed. I think we have, last time, how many women was it? I know we had at least 10 one night, but we've had even more than that.
We had 22 on the mats last night,
right?
And it easily was at least half.
At least half, yeah. And that's women of a lot of different ages. We don't have a lot of, I don't want to say older women, because that gives the impression that we're not welcoming to older women. But we do have a good mix. We have women in their 30s, like myself, and all the way down to in their 13s or 14, early teens, and we're all able to roll together. And what I like at our gym is that, and this is true anywhere you go, even if it's not spoken, you have the right to just to refuse as a woman to roll with someone. Maybe it's you just don't feel comfortable. Maybe it's just too much of a size difference. Because honestly, we have one of our friends. He's a big guy, big strong guy. And if he were to roll with one of these little 13-year-old girls, it's just not fair. They're not, neither of them, it's just too much of a size difference. And she can decide not to roll with him. And not that he's going around trying to beat up on little girls, or something. But, I like that our coach has made it very clear that you should be comfortable when you roll. Obviously you shouldn't be trying to get the easiest rolls out there.
No.
But if a situation genuinely makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to do that. So,
in that, to piggyback off of that, obviously talking about personal choice, you can choose not to roll with somebody. But if you do elect to roll with somebody and it turns out it was a bad call, don't be afraid to communicate to, if not that person, if you're not comfortable talking to that person, at least the coach, to tell them, hey, this guy's kind of rough with me. I understand, like, we're all equals on the mats, but he has to understand the discrepancies and at least, I guess, taper himself down to meet my level. Not to say that his jiu-jitsu is any better or worse, but there are physical differences that need to be addressed at times.
oh sure, absolutely. It's kind of like, we have a friend. I'll drop his name, Sean. Love him to death. Great guy. If somebody like Sean was attacking me on the street, and I've joked with him, I've said, I'm not going to be just using jiu-jitsu. There's going to be some stuff, ripping and pulling, and because he's just so much bigger than me. And if I'm fighting for my life, it's not going to be, IBJJF rules. It's going to be the streets. So, but yeah, so there's some things that, there are gender differences, not to say one's better or worse, but they're typically, now, of course, somebody may be blowing me up in the comments or, saying, well, Sarah, I know this one girl, some women are just beasts and they can just steamroll over guys. There are a few of them right like that. I'm thinking of people like Gabby Garcia, just these monsters that I would not in a million years want to pick a fight. There's guys I'd rather fight than Gabby Garcia.
Well, shoot, even that, like, there's someone out there, like even in your local schools, like one of your former guests, Lott.
Oh yeah, geez.
Like I made the mistake of going, oh, this is a young lady. She was a purple belt at the time, and I was a purple belt. So I was expecting, okay, Elena, she's a young lady. She's good at purple belt. So this should be a fun role. Elena put it on me. I was not expecting that kind of speed, power, pressure, and technique all in one out of a young woman. And I learned my lesson that day, especially against her.
Yes.
And thankfully I was able to open it up a little bit more on her. She could still pretty much handle me. It's pretty fun to watch when I roll with any of the Lott.
Oh, yeah.
Any of the Lotts, Nathan, Braden, or Elaine. I haven't rolled with Alyssa yet.
About to say, I didn't think you had. Yeah, but she still has the pressure like, all the other Lotts.
One day, maybe. One day.
But yeah, so getting back to that kind of statement is that there are some differences. There are those outliers. They're monsters. They're beasts. Doesn't matter who they're fighting. It's going to be a challenge. But it's important, I think, that you have a gym culture that recognizes that we're not big thing that we always try to emphasize. We're not trying to win rounds. We're not trying to kill our teammates because
speak for yourself.
It's hey, wrist lock, a child, hey, let's just go ahead and do it. Ankle lock the new kid. Yeah, let's boom. No. But yeah, so there's some things that you just got to take care of each other. And I think a gym that has a lot of females, typically they have that good, healthy mindset. And again, that comes from top down with how that person is. And one thing that I think, and I've kind of seen it, because before I started doing jiu-jitsu, I was doing like Krav Maga, Taekwondo, that kind of stuff. And I had wanted to do jiu-jitsu. But one of the places that I tried before I ended up at Anthony Mitchell's, before I met you, it was a very, I guess, bro gym is what it was. It smelled terrible. I saw no other females. I thought, okay, this is weird. I don't want to just be rolling around with a bunch of guys I don't know. I'm not intimidated by guys because, other martial arts, I've been and I've sparred and fought with other guys. And so that didn't scare me, but it was like, this is just, I don't know how comfortable I feel with guys, just rolling around with me, and they seem very overtly aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just not going to do that. And then I tried again at Anthony's, and it was just a much more welcoming environment. I think there were 2 other girls at the time. One still trains. The other one, she's gone. She got the blue belt blues. But I don't know. It's just one of those things that when I look back at my jiu-jitsu journey, I lost out on like 2 years. I could have been doing this for 8 years, instead of 6 years. Where would I be now? Kind of a deal.
Well, I find that question, where would I be now, is dangerous. I'm presently 28 years old as a brown belt. I started when I was 19, and I've been officially a member of 3 schools, and really closely related to a few others. And a lot of that time, as much as I wanted to devote solely to jiu-jitsu, I took the professional route, and I worked a lot. And I caught myself questioning, where would I be at this point if I said, forget the money, forget having a job, let's become a mat rat. And as good as one could imagine they could be, I think the path that we take in our life, what you choose to do, is the one that you're supposed to take. I look back at it, if I had decided not to take that job, I would have never been sent to the Jackson metro area where I met Sarah, and I would not be here today. I might be a very accomplished brown belt. That's a possibility, but it's not the path that was chosen. And altogether, I think I came out on the top.
I think you made a good choice.
That's good. That's good.
But I guess me saying that, I'm not saying, oh well, what if, and dwelling on that kind of thing. I guess that's not. Yeah, what ifs in general are soul destroying. Mm-hmm. But I'm just thinking to myself, if I had the opportunity to have been in a more healthy gym, at least I had the instincts to recognize this is not a healthy environment. I don't even know if that affiliation is still in existence. I don't know.
You passed the smell test.
Who knows? Did not pass the smell test, but I guess that just helps me realize, just how fortunate we are here. Mm-hmm. But one thing, I guess, looking at it, do you feel like, and I feel like this is such a bro question, like, well, if you got all those females, you can't go hard, you can't train for competition, you can't do blah, 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 blah. Is that a valid criticism, do you think, or?
To an extent, it really just depends on who you have available as a training partner. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with some of the younger ladies that we have at our gym, only, I would say, 5 of them on hand I feel comfortable opening it up a little bit on. Mm-hmm. The other ones, not so much. And even though 5 that I do open it up with, I am always actively aware that I am typically 30 pounds plus heavier, mm-hmm. significantly stronger, and also more experienced.
Right.
And I just need to be aware. Now, I do think for guys, it is important to have bro time, as Sarah stated. And I've actually started a 5:30 a.m. class here in our town. Everybody's welcome, obviously, but I guess my personal mentality and the kind of the people I attract, it's turned into my good friends that wake up at 5, like, let's just get on the mats and roll for 30 minutes to an hour.
What you're about to say, let's clarify for the listeners. Yes, it may say 5:30, but it takes them like 30 minutes of, shooting the you-know-what, sipping on that coffee.
Well, guys need to talk to. Hey,
I'm just saying.
The guys that it happens to be, our school has attracted professionals and no true, serious, high-level competitors, and that's perfectly fine. But it doesn't mean we do not get after it.
Oh, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm not saying that. I've been to some of those, but y'all just sit around sometimes.
Then bro time's not meant for you, Sarah.
Well, I am not a bro, so that does track.
I think that's good. I think that's good.
Let's say, yeah, I didn't catfish you there, but but I guess one thing that I've noticed, because I've been in a gym that was predominantly male, which I think statistically most jiu-jitsu gyms are,
Most.
And I've been in one that's almost 50-50. It depends on the day, depends on the week, so on and so forth. One thing that I have noticed in gyms that have a lot more females, there's sometimes the techniques get crisper. Sometimes. I mean, I guess it's because females have to throw more technique at you, but
Yeah.
I don't know
Anthony
what your
Mitchell
thoughts.
says it best, actually. He's like, women are the best at jiu-jitsu technically. Dudes are dumb. We like to think...
This is true. Yes.
We like to think every single one of us is the biggest, the baddest, the toughest. And it's very, very difficult, especially for a dude that's 170 pounds plus with some muscle on him, to say, you know what, I'm going to solely devote myself to the technique. I'm not going to muscle this. I'm not going to be explosive. I'm going to be as smooth and crisp as possible. I believe women have an innate understanding that this is a martial art for my self-defense. I'm not going to be overpowering a bad guy out on the streets. I need to learn how to do this well, quickly, sharply, in order to protect myself at all times. And when a woman really gets into it and gets sharp, it is really fun to watch, especially when you see them develop over time. So yeah, women really do get technical a lot quicker.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you have to, almost. I'm hoping that my audio is coming through okay. But I'm trying to think, what would be how to best phrase this. I know on some previous episodes I've talked about, mental health, trauma, those types of things. What would be the ideal way of training with males and females? Because obviously, when you're dealing with jiu-jitsu, some people may say, well, that looks weird. It looks like you're wrestling around. What's going on? They may think that it's an undercurrent of some kind of sexual situations. So how do you train with women this seems like it should be a no-nonsense question, but convey respect, support, those sorts of things. Like how do you maintain that level of respect?
So step one for me, especially when I'm training at a new school or getting to meet a new student that happens to be a female, is develop the relationship, get to know them personally. Let them understand, hey, I'm not here to impact you. One of the first things I do is that's my wife, Sarah.
Hi.
She's not going to hurt you. She's kind of more scared than me, but it's okay. Let them know I'm not in this for them physically whatsoever. As a guy, I don't typically approach women to roll unless it's one of those 5 that I'm comfortable around that I can open up on. If it's a newer person or a younger female, if they ask me to roll, absolutely. I am always aware of where my hands are. Just as a guy, it's part of the game. You just got to be careful. Sorry, guys, different body parts. You just have to be respectful. Just don't be grabbing quickly. Don't be out of control when you're moving. Don't try certain moves that put you in precarious positions. Just be respectful at all times. Don't go 100%. And I've got a personal rule that if I were to ever own a school, no female will ever roll with a white belt unless I give that white belt a seal of approval. I can tell a story that Sarah didn't take my advice one time.
Oh, yeah.
There was a new white belt guy. I was a blue belt at the time. Was I blue or fresh purple?
I couldn't.
Either way, I was at a fairly advanced. I was no longer a beginner.
Yeah.
A athletic young man came in, white belt, rolled with him. He was rough, just tough, and I could tell he was off a little bit mentally, but the kid was strong and he was tough to handle. And Sarah and I sat down on the wall, and the guy's asking for a roll. I'm like, Sarah, do not roll with him. She got all excited. I want to roll with him. I want to roll with him. I'm like, do not roll with him. She's like, I'm going to go roll with him anyway.
Yeah.
And I got frustrated, Sarah. And then Marlon, who is a brown belt, who I miss tremendously, actually. Mm-hmm. Marlon just kind of looked at Sarah. Marlon's a big old dude with the grill. And he just looked at her, don't roll with him. And she's like, okay, Marlon. I'm like, why do you listen to him and not your boyfriend?
He has a grill, yeah.
You listen to the man with the grill.
Yes,
Can I get a grill?
No.
Oh, come on, baby.
You look ridiculous.
Cuban Ben could use one.
Oh my gosh, don't even with Cuban, but don't even. Sorry. So, side note for the listeners, my husband has zero fashion. He likes to embarrass me in public. It is what it is. Gold chains are involved. He is in no way, shape, or form Cuban. He is white as sandwich bread. It's a whole situation.
She just wanted a little Latin flair to her life.
You're the furthest thing from Latin. Anyway, so yeah, I do remember. I think you were a blue belt at that time. Yeah, but yeah, no, and that's one thing too I've noticed is that it's usually the ones that I usually have problems with are those white belt guys, usually younger too.
As I said, young guys are dumb.
Yeah.
Like 25 years for our brains to fully develop, and even then, a little bit more time to mature.
Yes, his example is Cuban Ben.
Yeah.
So
Cuban Ben is quite intelligent.
But yeah, I think that's a really good idea and a really good rule. Just until somebody passes the sniff test, it's kind of like that 90 days on the job until you get benefits in some places. Like 90 days on the mats, then you can, we can see if you're stable enough, so to speak, to roll. And it's something that as a female, I typically have safer roles with, more experienced individuals. And, I've never had an issue really. I had one time, I had an issue where a guy, it was hand placement. This is before before I met you. And he was an older gentleman, and it was really uncomfortable. But I never rolled with him again. I did not partner up with him. I did not roll with him again. And that is what it is. And so that ended it. So, if it had continued, I would have brought it up to someone.
Was he a white belt?
No, he was not.
Really?
He was a blue belt, I think about to get his purple belt. So he was more advanced.
Oh.
And like I said, this was the only time that I ever felt this is not okay. This is someone who was old enough to be my father, and it was just I moved myself from the situation, and the situation stayed over there, and so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was uncomfortable, but made it through. And I would just think of all the times, that's not the time. You're literally someone's trying to kill you, simulated murder. No, she's not interested.
Not getting into this topic.
Yeah, don't get into it. No.
Guys only have so much control sometimes.
I know. But anyway, it is what it is. And so I know, like, whenever I roll if I've rolled a lot with females, I just because we don't have some of the important, pieces that guys do. And I have and I feel terrible. I will basically, because I do a lot of X guard, I will end up kicking them in between the legs. I've gotten better about it. Because but when I first started, and I was rolling with a bunch of females back to back, my foot would just, come right in between. I felt terrible.
Sarah has no care about her knee slice passes or her knee shields. They're always straight on.
No, they are not.
Oh, every time.
Oh, they are not.
Every time. No angle cuts whatsoever.
Please.
It's not a knee slice. It is a genitalia slice. It's quite terrible.
Oh my gosh, no, the log splitter pass, I remember the first competition I ever did, because I only ever trained with guys up to this point. And so this girl just all of a sudden does the log splitter pass on me. I'm like, you can't do that. It's like, but of course she could. There was no, absolutely you can. I had no response, and I was just looking over to the side, and my coach was just yelling at me like, "Get the first," just yelling. I'm like, but I didn't think she could do that, coach. Because no guy that I ever trained with just actively attacks that log splitter.
Shawn Michael.
He does?
Oh, Sean's terrible.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I've called him out on it a couple of times, and he
Okay.
laughs about it. But
Yeah.
Sean, if you're listening, you better watch those.
We've
knee
called
slices.
you out several times, Sean. I'm sorry about that. It is what it is. But yeah, so I guess in a way, I've noticed to keep a gym environment really healthy is just the attitude and being able to joke, have fun. What have you noticed on keeping a gym healthy as opposed to toxic?
For a guy, for me especially, is check the vibe and match it. I feel confident that I can go into any school at this point and make a friend and roll with those guys at their level and have a good time. I'm not saying I'm going to go get beat up and or beat somebody up, but you have to read the audience and understand, okay, who's here? With the school that, like ours, which is blessed to have a lot of young talent,
A lot of
a
young,
lot of teenagers, I cannot be my usual crude self around them. It's just inappropriate. And the environment that our owner has created is very old school in its beliefs, in the sense of you are respectful, you mind your tongue. And I probably push the boundaries a little bit with like my jokes,
Yeah, just a little.
but in comparison to what
Yeah.
I am like in real life, I feel like I'm pretty well behaved in the school.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah.
It's just knowing who's around you, and then let them make the first move. And like, okay, I can match that. Sounds good.
But I'd say because I don't know. I guess you cross train more than I do, and that's can be tricky to navigate. So I mean, what do you usually do? I mean, of course, the places where you and I train currently, I usually will go too. But what advice would you give for somebody with cross train? Do you think it's a good idea to cross train? I guess is the biggest thing.
I am a big supporter to be a crianche, as they say. I actually called into the Show You Roll podcast or not a podcast, but it was a call-in thing on Instagram, and I actually got featured on it. Being a crianche, I was actually able to meet my wife. I've been able to go to any state for work and Google, hey, where's the nearest school? I'll Google it in advance and contact that school. Give them a call or leave an email, a voicemail, Facebook, whatever. Say, hey, I'll be in town. I would love to train. What are your hours? What's what are your rules? White gi, no gi. What's your schedule? And if you come in humbly and respectfully, more times than not, you're going to make great friends. And especially if you travel for work, and I'm sure a lot of my more experienced jiu-jitsu guys that travel offer a drop-in fee at the end. If someone mentions money at the beginning, I kind of take that as an interesting moment, but I accept it and I'll do the one-time fee. But more times than not, I'll offer like, hey, how much do I owe you? Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. And sometimes people will even waive it if you're cool. Say, hey, man, I appreciate you coming in. Just give us a shout out on social media. And yeah, like I had a chance to go to Ottawa, Kansas for work. And I went to Rivers Jiu Jitsu in Lawrence, Kansas, which was really cool, really kind of old school, like grungy, great facility. It's in a basement though. And so it's like kind of got that tough feel, but it was a really cool school, good, cool people, young, tough. A lot of women though.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of women. And
First time hearing of this.
I wore my ring.
I know, I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
But it was a great time experience with him. Anthony Mitchell, he's welcomed me with open arms every time I go see him. Alan Hopkins in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, who gave me my purple belt, old school Pedro Sauer black belt. Love him to death. Being a crianche has allowed me to build relationships with people and open yourself up and see different mentalities.
Yeah.
And it's really cool and fun to be able to meet new practitioners and see what other people are doing.
Yeah. I know, I wish I could travel and go to different spots, like you, like over to I wish I could have gone with you on that. Dang kids, and having to, teach them, of course I'm kidding. If my children that I teach are listening, I love you dearly. No, I'm not going to do that. But I guess it's one of those things where me as someone who's evidently. Thank you. That's the word. Evidently a competition junkie. I love to compete. You never have to twist my arm for it. I may say, no, I'm just getting done with one. Oh, where is it? Okay, I'll go. Yeah, that's okay. I feel like if you cross train a lot, you get to see, if you're lucky enough to have somebody in your own division, you get to kind of see what they're doing, kind of their game plan.
Well, now then let me comment on that specifically.
Yes.
If you are traveling for jiu-jitsu because an opponent at your rank and weight class is going to be at, don't do that.
I'm not saying do that.
You're suggesting it.
No. Okay, let me rephrase. You get to see how other people, if they were in a similar stage, what's a trend? What are people doing? Okay. What's working? That's
so not
what
a specific person.
No, I'm not saying, all right, I'm going to be a stalker, find out where this person trains, go there. No, that is predatory stalker behavior. No.
I know you.
Please, no, do not put that out there for the listeners. But I do think, again, getting different perspectives, making friends, that's the one good thing I love about doing competitions. I've got friends all over the world now. I can message somebody like, hey, look at this cool thing or something like that. Of different ages, different stages, it's just really cool to see how different people approach jiu-jitsu. It's an ever-evolving Rubik's Cube or chess mat, if you will.
Oh, the game's always changing.
Oh, yeah.
When I started back in 2013, people like Leandro Lowe and Keen Cornelius were the pinnacle at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit here looking at I watch the videos and I listen to the interviews and I see just what it has evolved. And I was talking with one of our younger students yesterday who's 17.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, you are so lucky to be a part of this generation of grapplers because they are taking it to a new level of professionalism.
Oh, yeah.
And technique that is absolutely fascinating. So it's really cool to see how much has changed in my short amount of time of training.
Oh, yeah. And now there's so many more opportunities for people to make a professional go at it with jiu-jitsu. It used to be the only thing you could do if you were in jiu-jitsu to really make, any significant amount of money. It was to go MMA. And so now you've got things like the one who's number one championship, coming up.
Well, it's going to get to that point. It's still not quite there. And I think if you have listened to the Joe Rogan podcast with Gordon Ryan, he focuses on that specifically. If you want to listen to Gordon Ryan, who's probably one of the greatest no-gi grappler of all time.
For sure.
But professionalism is coming in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really cool and exciting to see.
Oh, yeah. No, it really is. It's exciting. It really is, And I'm just thinking to myself, like, the way that, just looking back on my first ever competitions and how the game has changed for me in my division. It went from being kind of, everybody was doing leg locks for a while in no-gi. I had to get good at those. And so, leg locks, had to get really good at those. And then it became a lot of pressure style wrestling, which I am not that. And so, and now it's going back to, like, how do we counter that wrestling pressure? What do we do now? And so it's changing. So I think, there's certain elements, that are always going to be there with jiu-jitsu in certain weight divisions, but it's just seeing how it changes. It's moves and counter moves all throughout. And so once you get really good at that counter, or we're going to have to counter that counter, what's the answer to that?
There's infinite answers to infinite questions. And jiu-jitsu is one of those cool ones where you don't have to worry about strikes to the head, where you can open up and see what is my game about strictly in the grappling sense. I do worry that some of the new age stuff at some point will get a little too much, but MMA will show what does and doesn't work in the grappling sense.
Right.
And we'll just have to watch and see what this new generation does with MMA.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu specifically.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm about to say, there's some things that they're never going to go out of style, like mount, back. That's always going to be, the top tier stuff, right? I mean, that's why we have the 4 points, and you can't stall from those positions. That's just what's your motivation to move on, right? But then there's some positions where I'm thinking to myself, I love leg locks, I love ankle locks, but that's not going to be my opening move, right? I mean, I'm not going. Now, somebody may say, well, hold on, you can make that an opening move and be safe. But realistically, if I'm getting attacked, God forbid, there's, I'm a school teacher, something goes down, that's not going to be my immediate go-to, right? Mine's going to be, a more domineering position, back control ideally, something to where I know I'm safe, I'm keeping somebody down, pinned, contained, something like that. And a leg lock can do that, but it's not going to do it as efficiently, I would argue, About to say, yeah, you get a good heel hook, you're not going to be wanting to move, but, somebody who's untrained, they're probably going to still be flopping around like a fish out of water.
Well, I think it was Master Elio that said specifically, he was asked, which you prefer, like arm locks or joint locks or chokes. He's like, I've never seen a man fight after getting choked out.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And so just being aware of what your submissions are doing to that person, and just imagining, okay, this is us recreating a fight on the ground. If this was a real deal situation, what could this person do?
Right.
And I feel like some of the new age stuff isn't necessarily addressing what can and can't happen. Like, obviously it's fun to open up and do some new age stuff, and I've personally kind of started trying the new age stuff a little bit, but I'm very much of the mindset of like, guard is meant to manage distance, manage either strikes to the head with the feet on the hips, or close the guard and get him as close as possible and work from there. Just being aware of what's going to happen. Would I be inverting against a guy that's about to punch me in the head? Probably not. But and that's kind of my mindset of what jiu-jitsu is for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's always that debate between sport jiu-jitsu versus self-defense jiu-jitsu. And I think both have their place. I think it would be wrong to pit them against each other. Because if you may not do something on the streets, doesn't mean that it's not a legitimate move. Because you just never know what's going to happen on the streets, right? I mean, you don't know. But then ultimately, you're keeping yourself safe regardless. In a sports situation, you're keeping yourself safe if you're using sports jiu-jitsu. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and sport jiu-jitsu, people say, oh, if you do sports jiu-jitsu, you're not practicing self-defense jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is meant to take a trained person to control a bigger, stronger, more athletic opponent. A sport jiu-jitsu person is, in my personal belief, is perfectly capable of defending themselves against a bigger, stronger, undertrained opponent. Now, the question of the new age stuff is, why is this new stuff developed? Well, we've been grappling. It's jiu-jitsu now versus jiu-jitsu. We both know each other's moves. We know the move set. We know what they're going to do. We know how they're going to respond. And so the game has now become, how do I counteract this grappler that knows what I'm trying to do?
Right.
And that's why it's really cool to see what has become, or what the game has become.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because I think about, some moves I might do, and it goes back to basics. It really does, but that doesn't mean that a fancy move couldn't work,
Oh, absolutely will.
Yeah, and so I think it's wrong to put those two against each other because, if you're training jiu-jitsu with a mentality of I want to get better, I don't have to be, some people don't want to compete, and that's legitimately fine. You can still, progress, get better. It's about the journey. That journey could be longer or shorter for others. But what I like about competition is that it shows holes in your game a lot better than, in a gym where, ideally, yes, they're pushing you, but they're not trying to kill you, right? And so in a competition, no, they're trying to kill you. And so that's going to show, okay, you've got a hole here. Hey, if you tweak this move here, it's going to be a stronger thing. So that way, competition, if I were to get, I don't want to say get jumped, but if something were to happen, okay, I may not be doing immediately slap, bump, go like in a jiu-jitsu match, but, I'm going to have that muscle memory of things that work well of, okay, when I'm pressured like this, I know muscle memory, I can do this and be safe, as opposed to if you don't put yourself in those kind of hard situations, you don't really know, like, how to move and be safe. Yes. I know I talk a lot about it with the ladies at our gym. I talk a lot about it's angles, guys. It's angles, it's angles, it's angles. And so, because I love one of my training partners, she is a pressure machine. And I can, still survive when I roll with her because of those angles and because of I've done this in competition before, so I know it's probably going to work. And then because I know that works, she wants to know, how do I do that to stop, so it's just constantly. Sports jiu-jitsu can inform self-defense jiu-jitsu and vice versa, if that makes sense, because of the physical pressure you get in a competition really does mimic a lot of the physical pressure that you're going to get on the street or something like that, I think.
Oh, yeah. There's like any time that I've got a new guy on the mat, and any of my blue belts that I train with can attest to this, is you get a dude off the streets that's like, I want to try this stuff. They might be a great athlete, and I've seen this personally. Great athletes come in, I want to do this stuff. I'm like, please, come on, let's train. And they get completely dogged by older, slower, not as athletic or strong opponents because they have focused on the technique and they understand how to move and probably defend themselves. Fighting is both a natural and unnatural thing at the same time, and grappling is the exact same way. A trained, intelligent opponent that knows what's happening, knows how to respond to certain situations, will almost always win out. And that's why grappling is so important, and especially in the fight game, is anybody can hit a good punch and knock you out. If you can close the distance and control the body, you can dictate the match. Anybody can get a good hit in. Sure. But if you close the distance, very little an untrained opponent can do.
Right, yeah. And it's, I have to say, from my experience too, when guys come off the street, well, that sounds a little odd, but coming in for their first class, right? At least guys have a tendency to overestimate their skills, it seems, in a fight, right? I can't remember there have been some funny memes I've seen where it's, guys think when they go rage mode, it's over.
I see red, bro.
Yeah, when I see
you don't understand.
It's like, no, we understand you're gonna end up, getting your butt handed to you, but they kind of come into the gym. They say, yeah, I don't want to hurt you. Well, if it's me. Oh. I don't want to hurt you, and I'm like, no, it's fine, I mean, just, I'll go, I always tell them I go based off of what you give me. And so, that's really what jiu-jitsu is. A lot of it's I go based off of what you give me. And, sometimes, we think, it's being a little insulting to say it that way, later on. But if you treat a match like I'm just going to match what you give me, to me, I have found I breathe a lot less tiredly.
Oh, yeah. If you don't dictate the pace, like you're just responding and it's not outside your purview and your realm of ability, it's so much easier.
Oh, yeah. And so and I'm also not actively trying to, kill you. Now, of course, in a competition, I'm not going to say, hey, Susan, I'm going to go based off of what you give me. No, you can't do that, right?
The competition is the opportunity to go full go.
Yes. And so, but, just in class, unless I'm doing a competition style role, I'm always thinking I'm just going to, whatever you give me, that's what I'm going to give back. So 9 times out of 10, I get pretty chill rolls. So, which, is helpful for me because I'm able to work on my technique a lot more. But then that also, because I'm able to work on that technique more, that helps me when we do have to go full stop, full go, I should say. I don't know if that's how you feel about it too, or.
It is now. Being a young guy, I was very focused on myself, and I want to get as much out of this as I can. If they don't want to go at my level, that's their problem.
Get on my level, bro.
And I was trying to, quote unquote, win the round in the training sessions, and it was fun. It's fun to go hard sometimes, but a lot of wasted energy, and also a lot of in a very few cases, ruined relationships. And as you develop the skill and the ability and you gain rank and respect from other people, you need to learn how to control and have fun with it, if that makes sense. There's very few people I truly open it up on nowadays. Even higher ranked guys that are much better than I am, I've found that, hey, let's play the game, let's have fun, let's see if we can trap each other in technique. Yes, we can try to go hard and kill each other, but is that what benefits both of us in this situation?
Right.
And so for young guys especially, and ladies, if you have a guy that you're training with, he's not going to probably understand it as a white belt, and if he's young and dumb, even as a blue belt.
Yeah.
So you should be cognizant of who you choose to roll with. Don't be afraid to say, no, I'm good. I don't roll with that fella. You can deny people the opportunity to roll. And a younger version of me would have been offended when someone says, I don't want to roll with you. But it's at this point, I've matured to the point where I understand, okay, maybe I do go a little harder than they are comfortable going. And maybe they're just tired and they just don't want to deal with it.
Could be.
And that's okay. Just go find the next partner. Sit down and have fun.
Yeah. And I think, having, these past couple of podcast episodes, I've had some amazing, females on talking about mental health and jiu-jitsu and, also having a role in the lives of a lot of young people as a teacher. Just seeing class and the time on the mats is just a way to connect with people. Obviously jiu-jitsu isn't therapy, but it's a way for us to make meaningful connections with people, and so it could be, somebody who's not wanting to roll with you. There may be something going on that, you don't know about, and that's something where jiu-jitsu, you don't know who's walking in that door some days. You may know that person, but it may not be the same person who came in yesterday, right? There may have been some terrible news. They may have lost a job. They may have had an anxiety attack. You just don't know. And that, the mat is a way for people to focus on a very specific problem right in front of them. And I think when you have that healthy mentality of, it's okay, we're here to help each other, we're here to build each other up. Yes, challenge and push as well, push your limits. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build you up. I think that's something that, I think women or men on the mats, if we can, recognize that, the community at large is going to benefit from it. I know there have been some scandals, right, with some men and women in jiu-jitsu before, but I think if we approach it, if any female out there is listening and wanting to get into jiu-jitsu, if you are, concerned about maybe it being awkward, physically perhaps, or maybe even relationally. I've heard, some women have concerns about that, if they have a boyfriend or a husband who may or may not be on board with it. Just know that finding a gym, it's a little bit like a dating process, right? You got to feel them out, do the sniff test, make sure that, it seems that there's respect, both for the instructor, that's of course, but then respect between the teammates. That's something that you're not going to probably know that first class. Now, if you do know on that first class, that there's something wrong, get out of there, right?
Yeah.
But, sometimes, everybody's on their best behavior those first couple of days, those first couple of dates. Oh, yeah, he seemed so great. I never would have thought he was a serial killer. Go on a couple of quote unquote dates, go to a couple of classes and get a feel for it. That may be different, when you're not brand fresh new, right? So
fresh and so clean.
Yeah, so fresh and so clean, yes. But yeah, any final thoughts, Mr. Ben?
Go train, have fun. Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to roll against the tough guy. But always trust your gut, trust yourself, and enjoy yourself. This is not everybody's going to be a world champ. I long since accepted that of myself. This is something you do for the long run. This is something you take into old age. This is something that you do to make yourself better every single day. It's one of the few true things that you put in true sweat equity, and it gives back to you. So go train, have fun.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you very much for being on the show, Mr. Ben. I know you can't go too far away from me, but
dang it.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, at least I was your first guy guest.
Yes.
It'd have been awkward if I wasn't.
Oh well, I'm so sorry.
Do you have the other?
No, I don't.
Do you have another guy lined up?
Okay. Let me just tell the podcast listeners he's trying to. Anyway, all right, guys and gals. Guy and gals, thank you for joining us today on this very special episode of Ben and Sarah Willis's podcast episode. Join us next time for another exciting conversation. So, see you again.